Hi everyone, so welcome to Wollstonecraftivism. So this is our 5th week. Today I'm actually in the meeting house building for the first time, and we've got Maja with us today, and Maja is a contemporary artist and designer, and we're going to learn a bit about Maja's work and what she does and what she's inspired by and what she creates, and then Maja's going to set you a challenge at the end of this, and that's going to be your project for this week. So Maja, we've got some questions for you. You use materials like offcuts that are seen as a waste product, and you use this to create new work. So why were you attracted to using waste material?
So basically everything started during my master degree at Royal College of Art in London. It was like a really short brief from my tutors from design products. Basically we had to choose a waste material to work with. I always wanted to work with textiles, so I thought that it's a chance to actually do something that I really wanted to do in a long time. But basically, like since the very beginning of the project, I just knew it's gonna be a snowball effect. I started like finding so many interesting things about the textile waste, like starting from like the methods of production of textile through like different applications of the work that I was creating. That actually I graduated from Royal College of Art and I'm still working with textiles nowadays.
That's great. So you started off at university when you were studying, and you still work with these textiles today?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, as I said, like textile waste has like many different form of application. I use heat actually to create a new objects out of it. And I think it's like really interesting because I'm taking literally the waste and through basically the power of craftsmanship, I'm turning them in really valuable projects. And I basically create different type of projects, starting from like sculptures, ending on the carpet, for example. So it has like different possibilities of usage in the end.
Yeah, and because you're using waste products to make something new, what kind of behaviours or thoughts do you hope that people have or they change when they see your work? I mean, we're talking about activism and craftivism in this programme, and is there a little bit of that in the work that you do?
Well, absolutely. Like that was basically the idea behind the project, to create the awareness about the textiles. What I do is working with artificial fibers and artificial textiles like polyester or acrylic. And basically, like textile industry and fashion industry, like really like it's hiding the truth, like a really dirty truth behind the textiles, and they are like seducing us really successfully to actually like buy textiles and buy clothes. What I'm doing is basically melting the textiles, and during the process of melting them, the textile, which are like usually like very delicate mesh or like a nice fluffy jumper, is turning into hard plastic. And I noticed, especially during my exhibitions, that like people are having difficulties with accepting the fact that that they're wearing and they are surrounding themselves with nothing else but textile, with nothing else but actually plastic. And what I'm trying to do through my work is actually creating this kind of awareness and just trying to implement the idea of actually like considering what are you buying and what you are throwing away. Also, like another like that's a little bit of irony of my project, because you know, like when you what basically like fashion industry is doing is creating like this amazing like let's say a dress which is decreasing the value. Like when you basically like buying it, it's already decreasing the value than when you're cutting off the label of it and then you're wearing for the first time. And like it's like basically using the half of the value of it. I'm taking this all the ways, and through actually the power of craftsmanship, I'm giving like it's an extra value and just like implementing it again into the world.
That's a really lovely way of explaining it, and I think that's going to resonate for a lot of the young people that are watching this video, because they're probably very used to thinking about like plastic, that you shouldn't be using plastic, but maybe they haven't really considered that that also is part of the clothes that they wear and the clothes that they throw away, and that so perhaps that will inspire them to be a bit more resourceful and conscientious, not just with like plastics and drinks and things, but also the fashion industry too.
Yes, absolutely, because we don't really have the methods of recycle of clothes, right? Like 98% of waste end up in the landfills or they are incinerated. And yeah, what I'm doing is basically using the same process of melting and usage the heat to actually upcycle the textiles.
Yeah.
And I hope that in the future, we'll be able to recycle them a little bit more. Right now, I'm working on basically a project when I'm creating furniture out of textile waste.
Oh, great.
Just because of its properties and changing the structure of the textile from something really soft and delicate into a hard plastic. So we'll see how it's going to end.
That's great. And Maja, do you want to tell us a little bit about your I'm Not Wasted project?
Yeah, so as I said, everything started during my my master degree course at Royal College of Art, and I was I just start with experiment. I really had hand-on approach on that project. In general, in my work, I like to experiment with material. I like to explore what type of relationship we are creating with materials. And I always think that it influence on the end of the project, and also it influence on the relation between the user and the product in the end. So it's giving almost an extra value to the object that we are creating. Yeah, as I said, my process of creating is it's pretty simple in the end, because I just experiment a lot. I don't really think what I'm doing. I basically took textile, I start cutting them, I start dissecting them, I start wrapping them around different objects like cardboard or a foam, just to think about the textile in a slightly different way than clothes, which we're really used to it. And then of course it started developing very quickly, and I start using a heat gun because that was a pretty simple tool to use it. And I start noticing that of course acrylic fibers and polyester fibers are melting and actually giving hard structure to the things that I already created. And for that, I started experimenting with all the possible workshops at my university. So I went to a textile workshop and started using heat press. And then I started creating this kind of very thin layers of plastic from the textile waste. And then I started using ovens. In the very beginning, it was just my kitchen. I ended up in really large scale ovens, used basically to create some kind of huge sculptures of furnitures. And I started basically melting them in a massive trays. And that's how I found out basically how to make, for example, a wall panels that I actually really like from that project. And also I started basically found different applications of my of the materials that I created, because the phase of experiment ended up, and then I basically created a catalog of materials when I was comparing how they look, how fragile they are, what might be the future of that materials, and then from that it turns into actually realization of the project and thinking about the possibilities of usage. And in the end, I created basically a wall panel made of polyester offcuts. I created this kind of really nice and soft carpet that was actually I was using for it a cotton salvages, and also acrylic waste, just to combine them together. And then it was and very sculptural piece of the shelving that might be used in the, for example, in the store exposition, or just simply as a decorative object. And also I just used basically the polyester that I melted, and it turned into this kind of stone looking material. And it took it so far away from the very beginning, from its original shape and texture, that that was just great to observe.
Right. And I guess it shows you just how much can be done, or just how much that we just, like you were saying, that we're just wasteful with things. So things can have so many different applications, like you said, and uses. And you have this fabric, but if you change it and then it has a different kind of, you can use it for all sorts of things. And we just are so not very good at that, are we? We're just so disposable.
Yeah, and we are not really even thinking about that, because who would have thought that I can create a rock out of textile, right?
Yeah.
it's just insane idea. But then, like, just after my graduation, I was invited for like to Stella McCartney when I was presenting my project to them. And basically, that was the thing that they said, "Oh my God, it's so good that we met you because we were actually looking for a material which looks like a rock, and you're doing it from clothes." And you're doing
wow.
And of course, we all know like the Stella McCartney approach to it. Like she's very thoughtful about about her textile waste and like how much they are producing it. They're making isolation material of it. And yeah, like just giving you like the idea that actually what you're doing may look a little bit extreme, and yeah, like it may be a piece of art, but actually it might have application in like industry.
That's a really good point. And Maja, we've got one more question for you, which is a bit about what what we're talking about, really. But I mean, this kind of conversation about waste and recycling and using materials and trying to be conscientious about the resources that you use. I mean, lots of people do that, whether they write music about it or they might write poems, and you use design and your art to do that. What is it that's good about using design and art in the way that you do that helps kind of spread that message or gets people thinking a little bit differently about that?
Well, I think like especially design has this kind of power that you can like smuggle, like basically like some kind of idea for everyday objects. And when it comes to like especially like product design, we are surrounded with objects on daily basis, right?
Yeah.
So when I present, for example, like some of my pieces in art galleries, sometimes like environment of art gallery may be a little bit terrifying, a little bit hermetic. You might not really feel comfortable with it. What design is doing is actually making some kind of like a shortcut between the creator and between the audience, right? So you can actually like send your message directly to people just because they are like experiencing objects on exactly every day. Great example was the carpet that I was talking about. Like some of people didn't really know what I was doing when they were looking at my wall panels, for example, or the shelving, which was like basically a sculpture. But it was just so easy to describe my project on the carpet because everyone has a carpet and they could touch it and just see it and just really understand how the acrylic is melting, how it's binding the entire carpet, and actually understand the idea behind my project, which wasn't that obvious when they were looking at the sculpture, of course.
Wow, that's a really good point. So therefore, because it was something that was familiar to them, they could understand it because it was something they have experience of and experience in daily life.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. Well, thank you so much, Maja, for answering all our questions and taking your time for this video. So what we're going to do now is Maja's going to be setting you all a challenge, and you're going to create a piece of work inspired by and using the same kind of experiments that Maja does in her work. So thank you so much for joining us, Maja.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me.